Some people say ignorance is bliss and what you don't know won't hurt you. I have to beg to differ. Ignorance is not bliss and what you don't know will hurt you. What you don't know can hurt you. And maybe what you don't know will indeed hurt you for sure. So I would say that ignorance is not bliss, and that in fact, ignorance is the enemy of love. Maybe ignorance is even the enemy of progress. Maybe ignorance is even the enemy of humanity's arising to what its potential truly is. But one thing I know for sure, ignorance is not bliss. The saying ignorance is bliss is comes from not really wanting to know exactly what's going on. Um, it does seem that some people who are in ignorance truly are in bliss. The ones who don't know the situation in the world of how dire maybe humanity's situation is, maybe maybe to them ignorance is bliss. I mean, to those who do kind of know how dire humanity's make it or break it stage is right now, humanity has to awaken. It has to get more intelligent. It has to take care of the earth better. It has to become more spiritually aware. Humanity has to become more responsible with what it creates or doesn't create. It has to get better at being caretakers of the earth. Humanity has to do things better than it does right now if humanity wants to go forward into the future. That's for sure. We all know that. At least those of us who are paying attention and aren't ignorant. And so, but it does look like ignorance is bliss to those of us who are paying attention, because there's suffering that goes along with not being ignorant. So, in a way, ignorance is bliss for those who are happily going along as if there's nothing wrong, there's nothing to fix, they're content, uh, they don't have any trauma, they don't have any healing that they're aware of needing to do, they're not aware of anything to change in the world, they're seeming to live a happy life, and they do believe that everything's okay. So, in a way, ignorance is bliss when you are unaware that there is danger or unaware that there are things that need to change. However, ignorance is the enemy to humanity awakening to this future that it has possible for it. Humanity has the potential to have this beautiful future, an absolutely beautiful, fulfilling, awake and aware future where humanity might even have some of its superpowers and might even have galactic connection with the other species in the universe. Because, I mean, look how big it is. It's impossible to assume that we're the only intelligent life in the universe. And, oh, God help us if we are. I mean, wouldn't we be in trouble in the universe if we're the only intelligent life here? Oh my goodness. Ooh, poor universe. So, so well, we have the possibility of advancing to a level that humanity hasn't reached before, at least not this version of humanity. I do believe, and in fact, in my dimensional travels, have seen, while I was in that coma a long time ago, I have seen other versions of humanity that are quite aware, awake, and evolved, and very connected with the other, shall we say, communities of the universe that are awake, evolved, and aware. And humanity, this version of humanity, has that ability to reach that if humanity gets to the point where it's not having wars and poverty and lack of opportunity and this gap between those who are in shall we say abundance versus those who are not, those who are healthy versus those who are not, those who have a good standard of living versus those who are not. So ignorance is the enemy of love. Ignorance is the enemy of progress. Ignorance is the enemy of humanity's future. Ignorance is not bliss. And what you don't know will hurt you. What humanity doesn't know will change its destiny. And so it's important that we all stop being ignorant, that we stop letting this ignorance is bliss and what you don't know won't hurt you be our mode of operandi. Because a lot of people really don't want to know. I mean, sometimes when I talk to someone who is kind of happily going along, and like I talk to them about how we have to awaken our brothers and sisters and help them make better choices in life, and maybe help them become a little bit more aware of how they affect the earth and how they impact the earth, even though they're just one individual, how their consciousness can be used more efficiently to influence humanity's future. Sometimes people are like, well, I really don't want to know because I'm having a good life and I don't really want to know about the suffering that's going on over on that side of the world. I don't really want to know about what can happen if I'm not being responsible with what corporations I'm supporting with my money. I don't really want to know what happens if I don't take responsibility for what leaders we're putting in charge of our reality. If I don't know, then I can go on happily and not really have to take any responsibility for what humanity creates. And I can just be a beach bum and have a good time and keep buying what I buy at the mall and uh, live in bliss. Ignorance is bliss. But ignorance is not bliss. And it stops being bliss when what you don't know comes to bite you in the butt. And when what you don't know comes to hurt you, what you don't know hurts you. When that comes, then ignorance is no longer bliss. And in fact, you're very unhappy that you didn't take responsibility at the time that you could have, or that you didn't do the healing that you could have at the time that you could have. For instance, some people are like, you know what? I don't want to know what happened in my childhood. I don't want to work on the healing right now. I don't want to dive into my shadow work. I don't want to do any of that because I just want to earn money and have a nice car and attract the perfect man or the perfect wife. And I want to have the American dream and I want to have the perfect everything. And I don't want to have to dive into things that might make me sad. Because if I do, then I might not be able to focus on my material abundance. So these are the things that are going to hold you back. Because if you're not being aware of what is really underneath, undermining what is your abundance. For instance, a person might try really hard to manifest abundance, but they just can't because there are these core wounds that they never actually healed. These core wounds that they are still ignorant of. And this is why ignorance is the enemy. Why ignorance is not bliss is because what you don't know is hurting you. What you don't know can hurt you. For instance, if you don't know about a core wound that you have, a core wound that you haven't healed yet, and it may be at the very center of all the reasons why you are having such a hard time manifesting abundance, or why you are having such a hard time manifesting healthy relationships. It might be at the very center of why you are having a hard time manifesting safety and why you are still in fear. So try not to let ignorance continue to be the enemy. Why does ignorance have to be the enemy? Why does ignorance have to continue to hold you back from really getting to the bottom of things in yourself as an individual and in the world as a whole, and that we take responsibility for what we're creating? Ignorance is not bliss. Ignorance is not going to lead you to your fullest potential. Ignorance is going to hold you back. Staying unaware of what is going on, staying unaware of what is truly in the shadows in your unconscious, staying unaware of the spiritual inner work that you have to do is not going to get you there any faster. And what you don't know can hurt you. And what you don't know will hurt you. Because when it shows up, and in fact, it's already showing up, you might not realize that what you don't know has already shown up, has already undermined your reality, has already made it so that you're not creating the abundance that you're totally capable of, has already made it so that you're not creating the peace that you could create in not just your individual life, but also that you could create in the world. So let's not hide behind the ignorance is bliss thing anymore. Let's get strongly behind ignorance is not bliss. And I do want to know how ignorance is the enemy of my full awareness of what is really going on deep within my unconscious, deep within myself, so that I can truly remove all the blocks that are holding me back from having the true potential that I was supposed to have in this lifetime. I do want to know how ignorance is the enemy of my fullest awakening. I do want to know how ignorance is not bliss, so that I can understand what the suffering is over there on that side of the world, so maybe I can do something about it. And maybe you can't do something personally about it, like for instance, go out there and feed the children that are starving, but you can support an organization that does. And I'm not saying, just go and pour your money into, organizations that you haven't researched. Try to find the smaller ones that might not be as well funded, but they're the ones that are actually, really doing something. I mean, I help a guy who he goes and he installs clean water into these little villages, in these small places where the people don't have clean water, and I've donated to that small organization. And I also have mm, donated to animal rescue places here in Ecuador to help people who are saving animals that aren't going to get saved any other way in this poor country, because animals get a pretty raw deal in these third world countries. Um, I donate to the zoo because, especially during the pandemic, no one was going to the zoo anymore, and they were like, we got a $4,000 a week food bill, or $4,000 a day. I don't remember what it was, but or I think it was per week. They were like, "How are we going to feed the animals?" Um, and that was like a true thing I knew was going to the animals and not going into some administrator's pocket. The bigger organizations, I think you have to worry about that with, but the smaller ones, you can be sure that you're supporting. I also personally gave out food to the Ecuadorians who live around me, who were really having a hard time in the pandemic, and occasionally still do, especially to the elder people here who have no support. So, and I contribute to the school. Just painted their roof not too long ago. So there's ways that you can contribute to helping with the suffering in this world All you have to do is just a little bit of research to make sure that you're giving the money or supporting in a way that it goes to its true purpose instead of just making some big organization administrator rich, which, yes, we know that's being abused. Um, so find ways that you can take responsibility for what you're ignorant of when it comes to doing your part in the world. When it comes to doing your part for the shadow work, doing your shadow work, doing your spiritual work for yourself, doing your inner spiritual work. If you want to change what's going on out there, if you want to change what your reflection is of your projection, because remember, this is a big projection reflection machine. It reflects whatever your consciousness is projecting. And if you want to change what's out there, you got to change what's in here. This is where it changes. And ignorance is not bliss when it comes to ooh, changing what's in here. You cannot remain ignorant of what's inside you, because if you do, oh, that's going to hurt you, because that reflection out there is not going to be too pretty until you get it pretty in here. You have to get it pretty on the inside. If you want it to be pretty on the outside, you have to get it pretty on the inside. So do your inner spiritual work, do your inner shadow work, because ignorance is not bliss when it comes to doing your inner work, doing your spiritual homework. And so find your bliss by not letting ignorance be your bliss. Because ignorance is the enemy of love. Ignorance is the enemy of your awakening. Ignorance is the enemy of humanity's future. Because as long as we don't stay ignorant, and this is humanity's future, if we don't stay ignorant to the suffering of every part of the world and every place that we create that suffering, every footstep we make, take responsibility for every part of how we affect this world, where every penny goes. If we take responsibility for that and we no longer remain ignorant, then this world is going to change overnight. For instance, if you spend $1 extra to buy recycled materials toilet paper instead of toilet paper made with non-recycled materials, then you're actually an individual who's taking responsibility for changing the world just a little bit with doing something just as simple as buying a different toilet paper and supporting a company that may be smaller, and one that can't produce it as cheap, but it's one that's doing something that is changing the world for the better. Maybe it's a company that can make toilet paper out of hemp. Hemp is going to make it so that once we start making everything out of hemp, this world's going to be so much better. I mean, the rainforests are going to be saved, the oxygen production on the planet's going to be fine. Everything's going to be so much better. I mean, we can make plastic out of hemp, for Christ's sake. I mean, this is ridiculous that we're not using hemp for making paper, clothing, cable, um, books. Like, I mean, what can you not make out of hemp, basically? Um, and it grows, it's a weed, it grows. And I'm not talking about the kind you smoke or whatever. I'm talking about the stuff that you don't smoke. I mean, it's really productive. And so support the companies that are advancing this kind of technology. You could build a house out of hemp. There's these hemp bricks. You fit them together. You don't even need any cement. I was just told about that. And it's the material of the future that will eliminate petroleum in a huge, well, maybe all of our products. So take responsibility. Ignorance is not bliss, and it's really important now that you look at what your footprint is. Buy stuff that supports companies that will that are changing the world, that are making the world better. Take responsibility for how you are in the world. Save a gallon of water while you're brushing your teeth. Turn the water off while you're brushing. Turn the water off while you're soaking your hair down. I would save a few gallons. Maybe be in the toilet a couple of times before you flush it. I mean, you don't have to waste as much. If every individual was to do this every day, this world would be, be so awesome. So, you first. You start, you show them. You show them how it's done. Show them that ignorance is not bliss. And show them what it looks like to be a person who lives as though ignorance is not bliss. And show them what they don't know that can hurt them. Show them. And show them through your spiritual growth as well. I'm talking on two levels here: physical level, spiritual level, inner level too, which is, the spiritual level. And you got to do your spiritual inner homework. You gotta adjust in here so that and don't stay ignorant of the shadow work. You gotta face the shadows. You gotta face the parts of yourself you don't like. You have to face the past. You have to face the things that you've been trying not to face. You have to face it. Just face it. Just get it done. Get it over with. The fastest way is through it. You can't get around it. You can't ignore it. You can't spiritual. I'm not talking about spiritual bypassing. You can't spiritual bypass it. You can't do any of that. You can't just ignore it. Ignorance, same root word. You can't ignore that which you don't want to be aware of, because it's going to come and make you pay attention at some point or another. And that's when ignorance is not bliss anymore. And then it's really not bliss. So might as well take care of it while ignorance is still maybe a little bit bliss. And become aware of it before it becomes an emergency, before it becomes a crisis, before it stops you in your tracks. So ignorance is not bliss. Ignorance is the enemy of bliss in the long run, if you really want to know the truth. And what you don't know can hurt you. It will hurt you. And it may already be hurting you, whether you're aware of it or not. So turn around, face what you've been ignoring, face what you've been ignorant of, and do something about it. Do something about it. Make peace with the past. Make peace with yourself. Make peace with whatever bad programming you have. Change the programming. Only takes 60 days to break a bad program habit in your head. And take the actions necessary to have a beautiful footprint on this earth to the best of your ability. I'll talk more about that in the future, but I just wanted to bring that up today so that maybe you could think about this for a little bit. Just how does my footprint look on this earth? Just how do I ignore what's in here and thus it reflects out there? All right, just remember, ignorance is not bliss, and what you don't know can hurt you and probably already is. Namaste.